Maniacs. Long time no see. I've been out of commission for a little while. I had a little heart issue some years back and had to change my lifestyle, and got into different things. I've been coaching kids lacrosse and stuff. Anyway, all that aside, I'm going to sinew back this Juniper bow today. A little bit of recurve tips on it. I've got some water heating up. I'm going to show you how I mix up the hide glue and float one pot inside another, kind of like a double boiler situation, and we'll take it from there. We'll get started. Okay, here's what we got going. We got the bow ready on blocks, so it's up off the table. It won't make a big mess. I got a pot of water starting to heat up. I've got another pot here that I'm going to mix up the hide glue in with cold water. Very important you mix it with cold water so it doesn't get all lumpy. And then we'll heat it up after it's the right consistency and stuff. Get a little water here on the side. And here we go. Okay, I've got my Knox gelatin from the supermarket. It's very refined and strong hide glue. I've used it a bunch of times to make sinew-back bows. Frankly, I haven't made any in such a long time. I'm not sure how many packets to use, so I'm going to sort of play it by ear, actually more by eye, and see how it looks. I'm going to mix it up in this pot here. And put in a packet. Add some cold water. Just a little bit first. A little stick to mix it up. If I put this into hot water, it clumps up like in marble-sized clumps and makes a big freaking mess. This way, I'll get a good consistency first. We'll let it even set up a little and gel so we can see what it looks like. And then when it's time to start putting it on the bow, we'll heat it up. You don't want it too hot. Okay, that's packet number 2 going in. I'll probably shoot for just 3 packets, maybe 4. I'm going to add a little bit more water. I'm kind of just looking at the color now and sort of the consistency, which you can't really tell until it starts to set up and gel. Packet number 3. And I don't know if you can see how nicely it's mixing up because it's cold. If you want to see what happens when you put the hide glue into hot water, watch some of the other videos out there. I assumed at first that was the way to do it too, but it works much better cold. Somebody else taught me this. Yeah, I'm going to finish mixing this up off camera. It's just kind of boring. Alright, I've got my glue in a pretty good consistency. It's still cold. I'm going to let it set. In the meantime, I'm going to get some other stuff ready. I've got the pot of water. It's almost at a boil, which is a little too soon. So I'm going to turn that down some. But what I'm going to do is float this pot on top of the water, and so I can keep it in one spot. I'll just clip it to the side here so I can dip it in and it won't float around and get away from me. So this is how I'll keep this hot without it getting too hot, and I'll test it with my fingers. If it gets too hot for the touch, it'll be too hot for the sinew. So as long as I can stand it with my fingers, it'll be cool. Alright, like I said, I'm going to let that cool a little bit. So I'm going to take it back out and let it hang for a little while. I'm going to get the sinew ready now, and I still have to sand the back of the bow a little bit. Okay, while I get the glue ready and the water ready, I'm going to just sand the back of the bow so it's a little rough. I'm going to sand down high spots. There's a bunch of little like pin knots and stuff here. I'm using like a 60 grit sandpaper. And before I start, after the glue's ready, I'm going to smear the whole back of the bow with glue. to size the back. Just like anything you might glue up, you put glue on both surfaces first. It gives you a better gluing surface in the end, better adhesion. That's the word I was looking for. So I'm going to continue to sand this, get it ready. I'm going to dust it off. Alright, the water's heating up. The glue is just about ready to go. The bow is sanded and cleaned off and ready. I've got that, actually it's a model dot shaft there that I'm going to use to drape the little bundles of wet sinew over, so I can just grab them off of that thing and put them on the bow. Here's the sinew all processed. It's 4 sinews. It started like this. It's ostrich leg sinew. I beat this with a hammer until it was softened. This outer sheath comes off, and then I just start peeling apart. So each one of these bundles came from something that looked like this. This bow will probably take 2 of these bundles to sinew, I think. We'll see how it goes. So now I'm going to separate these into separate little bundles that I'm going to wet and hang over the stick here and get them ready to go on. They'll be about as thick as my finger, maybe a little wider for each little bundle, and we'll start applying in the handle first and work outwards to the tips. Okay, I've got a bundle. I'm going to mix together long ones, short ones, doesn't matter, as long as it's all feathers out nicely. I'm going to wet them, let them soak a little bit, stretch them by tugging on them a bit. I might soak them a little longer than this, but just to show you, I'll get out most of the water. And then I'm going to take it and drape it over that stick over there, like this. I'm going to drape this over that stick so it's ready to go, and I can just reach over and grab one bundle, dip it in the glue, put it on the bow, as you'll see. Alright folks, I'm progressing along nicely. I've got a bunch of sinew processed and hanging over the stick. It's wet in bundles, all straightened out, ready to go on the bow. And the glue is setting up really nice. It is a great consistency from my past experience. If this was in the fridge, it would be Jell-O by now. But it's ready to go back on the burner and heat up and become liquid again. And then I'll smear it on the back of the bow to size the bow, and we'll get started. First, I want to show you a cool way for separating the fibers. Some people comb them. I like to use the water, which serves 2 purposes: to wet it, but also it helps to straighten it out. Without even putting my fingers in there to help, you can see how the strands kind of separate themselves and they float nicely. And I'm going to try to show you, if I can capture it on camera, how I use this effect, kind of like the it's like a mermaid's hair in the water. The effect to get those fibers all nice and straight and long, and then I'll hang it up on the rack with the others, getting it ready to go. Here's some of the final part of the 3rd bundle, just going in the water just like that. Let it sit for a few minutes, and then I'll come back and I'll tease it out like I just did, stretch it a bit, and hang it up, getting it ready to go. Okay, I'm going to fire up the stove. The water's still really warm, so I don't have to put the heat up very much. Again, I want to get the glue to a temperature just a little bit where it's uncomfortable for me to put my hand in, but not so much that I can't put my hand in it. Okay, so I'm going to put that to the side so it's in the water, but it won't roll all around when I start dipping the sinew into it. I'm going to put the lid back on and let that heat up. It's only taken about a minute and a half for this hide glue to get back to a liquid state. I'm going to let it warm up a little more. And it's warm, but it's not too hot just yet.
but it's just about right. So I'm going to make sure the gas is turned down, the burner's turned down kind of low, and just enough to keep it at that temperature where it's just a little uncomfortable for me to put my fingers in, but not so hot that I can't do it. And that should make it just about right. If it's too hot, the sinew will just shrivel up. It cooks it. You don't want that. Okay, the glue's at a nice temperature now. And I'm just going to size the back of the bow by just dipping my fingers in and rubbing it on. Make sure to get around the sides a little bit. Any mess on there will get sanded off later. That doesn't really matter. I'm going to go around the tips too, because I'm going to wrap the sinew around those tips some. I'm just going to rub that on nice with my fingers, get it into the wood grain. Into the handle area. Sinew can be sanded just like wood. So in spots where I may not want it, or I'll drape it into the handle area, and I may want to sand some of that out. There'll be no problem later on. And I'm making sure to hit the sides and the back. And the belly on the tip area. And that's pretty good there. So I'm going to let that set up, dry a little bit. Maybe I'll turn off the gas so my glue doesn't get too hot. Take a little break, and we'll be back to start the sinew.